Here's a quote you have probably heard. When the Supreme Court ruled against him, Andrew Jackson supposedly said, "John Marshall has made his decision, now let him enforce it." There is no record he ever said it. That line was invented decades after Jackson was dead, but the true story is stranger and quieter than the fake quote. A man was sentenced to years of hard labor. The Supreme Court said the sentence was illegal. And the President of the United States did something that never makes it into the quote. Nothing at all. This is the story of Worcester versus Georgia. Samuel Worcester was a missionary from Vermont, living on Cherokee land in Georgia. He had permission from the Cherokee Nation itself to be there. Georgia did not care. The state had passed a law requiring any white person living on Cherokee land to get a state license and swear an oath of loyalty to Georgia. The law was aimed at missionaries like Worcester, who Georgia believed were encouraging the Cherokee to resist being pushed off their own land. Worcester refused to get the license. Georgia arrested him. He was convicted and sentenced to 4 years of hard labor in a Georgia prison camp for living somewhere with the Cherokee Nation's own blessing. Worcester's defense rested on a simple claim. Georgia had no authority here at all. The United States government had signed treaties recognizing the Cherokee Nation as a sovereign nation, not a population subject to Georgia's laws. If that was true, Georgia's entire prosecution was built on nothing. The case climbed all the way to the Supreme Court. On March 3, 1832, Chief Justice John Marshall delivered the ruling. 5 justices to 1, the court sided with Worcester completely. The Cherokee Nation, the court held, was a distinct political community with its own sovereign rights. Georgia's law violated the Constitution's Commerce Clause, violated existing treaties, and violated Cherokee sovereignty outright. Georgia, the court said, had no legal authority on Cherokee land. None. It should have ended there. Worcester should have walked free. He did not. This is where the famous quote is supposed to come in. Jackson, defying the court. Now let him enforce it. Historians have gone looking for that line for a long time. It does not appear in any of Jackson's letters. It is not in any speech, any diary, any newspaper from 1832. The earliest trace anyone has found is a book written in 1864, 32 years after the ruling, 19 years after Jackson was already dead. And there is a deeper problem with the quote. Jackson was never a party to this case. The ruling was about a Georgia state law. There was no court order directed at Jackson for him to enforce or defy in the first place. The famous confrontation never had anywhere to happen. What Jackson actually wrote is less quotable and more chilling. In a letter to General John Coffee, he said, the court's decision, in his words, quote, has fell stillborn, and they find that it cannot coerce Georgia to yield to its mandate. It reads like dismissal, plain and simple. One account even has Jackson joking that if anyone asked him to enforce the ruling, he might call up the Massachusetts militia to do it, not because he meant it. Because he believed Northern abolitionist sympathizers were behind the case, and the joke was aimed at them, not at Georgia. Here is the part that never makes it into the famous quote. Jackson did not need to say anything defiant. He simply did nothing. No federal marshals went to Georgia, no order was enforced, no showdown ever happened. Samuel Worcester stayed in prison, doing hard labor, for months, while the highest court in the country had already ruled in writing that his imprisonment was illegal. The most powerful office in the country had the standing to act, and chose silence instead. Worcester's release, when it finally came, had almost nothing to do with the ruling itself. Later that year, South Carolina threatened to nullify federal tariff law entirely, a real constitutional crisis. The Jackson administration did not want Georgia's own defiance of federal authority sitting right next to South Carolina's, for very different reasons but with the same bad optics. Under quiet political pressure, Georgia repealed the law and released Worcester and his fellow missionary Elizur Butler in January of 1833, almost a full year after the Supreme Court had already ruled the whole thing illegal. It is tempting to connect this ruling directly to the Trail of Tears. The real chronology is more precise than that and worth getting right. Jackson had already signed the Indian Removal Act in 1830, 2 years before this ruling. His removal policy did not depend on this case at all. In 1835, a small breakaway faction, not the actual Cherokee government, signed away Cherokee land in the Treaty of New Dakota. In the forced march itself, the Trail of Tears, happened in 1838, a full year after Jackson had already left office, ordered by his successor. Worcester versus Georgia did not cause the Trail of Tears, but it was the one moment the law was actually on the Cherokee Nation's side. The Supreme Court said so, in writing, 5-1. And the president who was supposed to see that ruling enforced did not say a defiant word. He just never showed up. If this story stayed with you, like this video and subscribe. There are more of these than you would believe.